Zanil sat in her small office at the community clinic in Durban, finishing up patient files when her phone buzzed. She smiled, thinking it might be a message from her best friend. But when she glanced at the screen, her stomach dropped. It was from her mother, Namsa. The message was short and sharp. Locks change. You're no longer welcome here. For a moment, she just stared at the words, reading them over and over, hoping she was misunderstanding. But there was no follow-up message, no explanation. Just silence. Her hands began to shake. That house wasn't just a place, it was home. The one she grew up in, filled with laughter, Sunday stews, and Gogo Thembai's soft humming from the garden. Every memory she had lived within those walls. Now, everything she owned was trapped behind a locked door, her clothes, her nursing books, even the little jewelry box her late grandmother had left her. She felt her chest tighten as tears blurred her vision. Why would her mother do this? She tried calling. No answer. She texted back. Mama, what's going on? The message ticked blue, but still no reply. That silence hurt more than the words themselves. After a few minutes, the tears stopped. The shock began to harden into anger. Zanil wiped her face and sat up straighter. She didn't know what had pushed her mother to this, but she did know one thing. She wasn't going to let this message be the end of her story. Something deep inside her shifted. Maybe this was the moment everything would change. A week before that cruel message, Zanil and her mother had their worst fight yet. It started over tea in the kitchen, like so many of their arguments did. Namsa had asked, almost demanded, that Zanil help out with money again. But this time, Zanil didn't have extra cash lying around. She had been saving for months to start a small nursing business with her best friend, something she had dreamed of since finishing nursing school. When she explained this, her mother's tone changed. So you think you're too good for this family now? Namsa snapped, slamming her mug on the counter. Zanil tried to stay calm, saying softly, Mama, it's not that. I just need to build something for myself first. But her mother wasn't listening. The words rolled out sharp and bitter. You forget who raised you. You forget who fed you. And now you want to keep your money to yourself. Zanil felt a lump rise in her throat. Every time she tried to set a boundary, her mother made her feel guilty, like she was selfish for wanting her own life. That day, she stood her ground. I'm not refusing to help, Mama. I'm just asking for time. Please try to understand. Namsa's eyes narrowed. You'll regret this. Zanil brushed it off then, thinking her mother was just angry in the moment. She didn't think those words were a threat. But now, a week later, sitting in her tiny office with that heartless text on her phone, everything made sense. The eviction wasn't random. It was punishment. Her mother had locked her out to teach her a lesson. For hours, Zanil tried everything. She called over and over. She texted long messages, begging her mother to talk. Please, Mama, can we fix this? She even went to the house after work, only to find the locks really had been chained. Her key didn't fit anymore. Through the window, she could see her childhood bedroom. Curtains drawn, lights off, her life boxed up behind glass. Neighbors stared from across the road, whispering. The humiliation stung, but the heartbreak was worse. She sat on the pavement outside, her bag beside her, watching the sky darken. How could her own mother throw her out like a stranger? That night, she slept at her friend Lorado's place, her mind replaying every argument, every cold silence. She kept hoping Namsa would call and say it was all a mistake, that she could come home. But the phone stayed quiet. Zanil realized then that her mother hadn't just changed the locks to the house. She'd shut the door on their relationship too. And that was a kind of loss Zanil didn't know how to grieve. That night, Zanil lay awake on her friend Lorado's couch, staring at the ceiling in the dim light. The city outside buzzed softly, cars passing, dogs barking. But inside, everything felt quiet and heavy. Her mind wouldn't stop spinning. How could her own mother turn her away like that? What had she done to deserve it? She turned on her side, hugging the thin blanket tighter around her. The familiar ache in her chest made her think of someone she hadn't thought about in a long time. Her grandmother, Gogo Thembai. Gogo had been her safe place growing up. When her mother's temper got bad, Zanil would sneak into Gogo's small room at the back of the house, where she'd always find peace. Gogo would smile, pat the space beside her, and say, Let the world be loud, my girl. We'll stay quiet and kind. Tears filled Zanil's eyes remembering those words. Gogo had passed 2 years earlier, but her voice still lived somewhere deep in Zanil's heart. She could almost smell her grandmother's favorite lotion, the one that smelled like lavender and sunlight. A clear memory floated back, those last moments they shared at the hospital. Gogo was weak, her voice soft, but her eyes were full of that same calm wisdom. She took Zanil's hand and whispered, I've left you something, my child, something no one can take. At the time, Zanil thought she was just trying to comfort her. Gogo had always spoken in gentle riddles and sayings that made sense later. Zanil had smiled through her tears and said, I already have what I need, Gogo. You've given me love. Gogo smiled faintly, but there was something knowing in her expression, like she meant more than Zanil understood. Now, lying there with nowhere to go, those words replayed in her mind like a puzzle piece she'd missed. Something no one can take. What did Gogo meant by that? Was it just her strength? Her faith? Or something real? Something she'd actually left behind? Zanil sat up slowly, brushing away her tears. The thought gave her a strange kind of hope, a spark she hadn't felt all day. Gogo had never spoken without purpose. If she'd said those words, there had to be a reason. Lorado stirred from the other side of the couch, mumbling in her sleep, but Zanil stayed awake, lost in the memory. Maybe it was time to look deeper into what her grandmother had left behind. Maybe Gogo had seen this moment coming, the heartbreak, the rejection, and had prepared her in her own quiet way. As dawn began to lighten the sky, Zanil made herself a promise. She wasn't going to let that message from her mother be the final word. She would find out what Gogo meant, whatever it took. For the first time in days, she felt a small flicker of purpose. Maybe the answer wasn't lost after all. The next morning, Zanil woke up with a strange mix of nerves and determination. She couldn't stop thinking about her grandmother's words. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. Either way, she needed to know. So she took the day off from the clinic, caught a taxi to Petermaritzburg, and went to visit her late grandmother's old attorney, Mr. Dlamini. The small law office looked the same as she remembered. Faded curtains, the smell of old paper, and Mr. Dlamini's assistant sipping tea behind a cluttered desk. When Zanil walked in, the older man looked up from his files, squinting for a second before recognition spread across his face. "Ah, Zanil Thembai," he said warmly, standing to shake her hand. "It's been a long time. You look so much like your grandmother." Hearing that made her chest tighten. "Thank you, sir," she said softly. I actually came because I remembered something she told me before she passed. She said she left me something. I wasn't sure what she meant." Mr. Dlamini nodded, his eyes lighting up like he'd been waiting for this visit. Yes. I wondered when you would come for it." He turned to a tall filing cabinet and began rummaging through folders. Papers rustled as he muttered to himself. Zanil frowned. "Come for what, exactly?" He glanced back at her with a small smile. "For the deed, of course." "The deed," she repeated, her heart skipping. "To what?" He pulled out a brown folder, dusted it off, and handed it to her. "Your grandmother's property in Umlenga. Fully paid off. She wanted it registered in your name. She said it was her gift to the granddaughter with a heart of service." For a few seconds, Zanil couldn't speak. "Umlenga," she finally whispered. "That was one of the most beautiful coastal areas near Durban." She flipped through the papers, her eyes landing on the words. Title deed owner, Zanil Thembai Dlamini. It didn't feel real. A beachfront house. From Gogo. How had she never known? Mr. Dlamini chuckled softly, watching her stunned expression. "Your grandmother was a wise woman. She said you'd find this when you were ready, not when you were comfortable." Zanil's throat tightened. She could almost hear Gogo's voice again. Something no one can take. Her mother had no idea this place even existed. That thought made her both sad and relieved. Maybe Gogo had kept it a secret for this exact reason. To protect her from people who might try to take advantage of her kindness. Zanil left the office clutching the folder like it was treasure. The taxi ride back to Durban felt like a dream. She stared out the window, the coastline shimmering in the distance. For the first time in weeks, her heart felt light. Gogo hadn't just left her something material, she'd left her a second chance. And Zanil knew exactly what she had to do next. Go see the house for herself. Zanil couldn't wait another day. As soon as she left Mr. Dlamini's office, she caught a taxi straight to Umlenga, clutching the brown folder like it was a lifeline. Her heart was racing the whole way. She didn't know what to expect. Maybe an empty plot, maybe an old shack. But when the taxi turned down a quiet road lined with palm trees, she saw it. The house stood a little back from the road, worn but full of character. The paint was chipped, the gate hung slightly crooked, but it had a warmth that drew her in. A faded sign on the wall still read Thembai Cottage. Just seeing her grandmother's name there made her throat tighten. Zanil pushed open the creaky gate and stepped into the yard. The air smelled like salt and flowers. Somehow, Gogo's garden had survived the years without her. Hibiscus bushes swayed in the breeze, and lavender grew wild along the fence, their colors soft and bright in the afternoon sun. She could almost picture Gogo kneeling in the soil, humming as she worked. Inside, the house was quiet and dusty, but everything felt familiar. Wooden floors, old lace curtains, the faint scent of camphor and sunlight. It was like stepping into one of her childhood memories. The furniture was covered with white sheets, and the corners held tiny cobwebs, but the bones of the house were strong. Zanil walked from room to room, running her hand along the walls. She imagined laughter filling the space again, the sound of children playing, and people coming for help and comfort. It didn't look like much yet, but she saw what it could be. She ended up sitting on the front porch as the sun began to set. The ocean breeze brushed against her face, warm and soft. From where she sat, She could see the shimmer of the sea in the distance, calm and endless. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel lost. "Thank you, Gogo," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You really did leave me something no one could take." Tears slipped down her cheeks, but they weren't from sadness this time. They were from relief, from gratitude, from finally feeling like she belonged somewhere again. That night, back in Lorado's tiny apartment, Zanille couldn't sleep. She kept picturing the house, the garden, the porch, the possibilities. Her mother might have locked her out, but her grandmother had opened a bigger door. She grabbed her phone and started searching for renovation services near Umlanga. If this was her inheritance, she wasn't going to let it fall apart. She was going to turn it into something beautiful, something that reflected the kind of person Gogo always believed she was. When the contractor picked up, Zanille smiled through her exhaustion. "Hi," she said, her voice steady and full of quiet pride. "I'd like to bring an old home back to life." If her mother could throw her out, she could rebuild herself, stronger, freer, and without guilt. The next few months became the busiest and most beautiful time of Zanille's life. Every morning, she caught an early taxi to Umlanga, tied her hair back, and got to work. The old house that once looked tired and forgotten started coming back to life, piece by piece. She painted the walls herself, her clothes splattered with white and blue, singing along to the radio while the ocean breeze drifted through open windows. She planted new flowers in Gogo's garden, roses, marigolds, and fresh lavender to replace the old one. In one corner, she started a small vegetable patch with spinach, tomatoes, and herbs. The garden became her therapy. Each seed she buried felt like she was planting hope again. But Zanille wasn't just fixing the house for herself. She wanted it to mean something. After weeks of planning and budgeting, she decided to turn 2 of the front rooms into a small wellness clinic for low-income families. It was something she and her best friend, Lorado, had dreamed about since nursing school, a place where people who couldn't afford private care could still be treated with kindness and respect. She called it Thembai Wellness Clinic, in honor of her grandmother. At first, things were slow. A few patients trickled in each day, mothers needing checkups, old men with sore joints, young girls asking for advice. Zanille treated every single person like family. She didn't rush them or make them feel small. She listened. She cared. Word began to spread. People started calling her Nurse Z, the kind nurse by the sea who always had time for everyone. Then, something unexpected happened. A local journalist heard about her clinic and came to do a story. They took photos of her helping a little boy with a bandaged knee, standing proudly in front of her newly painted house. The headline read, "From Homeless to Healer, Nurse Builds Hope by the Ocean." Within days, donations started pouring in, medical supplies, furniture, even a brand new blood pressure machine from a local company. Old classmates reached out, offering to volunteer. Patients came from neighboring towns just to meet her. The once quiet street now buzzed with life and laughter. Zanille could hardly believe it. She'd gone from being locked out of her mother's house to owning a home that was healing an entire community. Every evening, she'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea, looking at the clinic sign glowing under the porch light. She often whispered, "We did it, Gogo." By the end of the year, Thembai Wellness Clinic was listed among the top-rated community centers in KwaZulu-Natal. But for Zanille, the real reward wasn't the recognition. It was seeing people walk away smiling, knowing she had made a difference. She had built more than a clinic. She had built a new life, one filled with purpose, peace, and pride. Success has a way of traveling fast, especially in small communities. Before long, word about Zanille's clinic reached everyone, including people she hadn't heard from in years. Photos of Nurse Z and her Ocean View Wellness Center were all over social media and in local newspapers. People called her inspiring. Strangers sent her thank you letters. But with the praise came something else, gossip. It started with her mother's circle of friends. They'd whisper in beauty salons and church halls, voices low but curious. "Have you seen what Zanille's done? That house is worth millions now." Another would add, "Imagine, all that land right by the beach. And she runs a clinic there too." The rumors grew with every retelling, twisting the story into something it wasn't. Soon, Namsa couldn't escape the talk. Her friends praised her daughter in front of her, smiling politely, pretending not to notice the look on her face. At first, she tried to brush it off, but jealousy has a sharp edge. Deep down, Namsa started to regret the message she'd sent that day, the one that had cut her daughter out of her life. One quiet afternoon, Zanille's phone rang while she was sorting medical supplies in her clinic. She looked at the screen and froze. "Mama." For a long second, she just stared at the name, unsure whether to answer. Her chest tightened with a mix of anger and sadness. But curiosity won. She picked up. There was silence on the other end for a moment before Namsa's voice came through, soft and shaky. "My daughter," she began. "I miss you. Let's talk." Zanille felt her throat tighten. The same woman who had texted, "You're no longer welcome here," was now calling her my daughter again. She took a deep breath and kept her voice calm. Now you remember you have a daughter? Namsa hesitated. I didn't mean it like that, and you know how I get when I'm angry. I made a mistake. Zanil looked around the bright, clean room she'd built with her own hands, the shelves lined with medicine, the sound of children laughing in the waiting area. This was her life now, one she created without her mother's help. The old version of her, the one who begged for love and approval, was gone. I'm not angry anymore, Mama, she said quietly, but I'm not the same girl you left behind. There was a pause on the line. Namsa's voice trembled. I just want to see you, please. Zanil didn't promise anything. We'll see, she said simply, then ended the call. As she placed the phone down, she felt a strange mix of emotions, sadness, power, and peace. Her mother's voice no longer had control over her. For the first time, Zanil realized she didn't need her mother's approval to feel whole. She had built something bigger than forgiveness. She had built herself. A few days after that call, Zanil was at the clinic helping a young mother when she noticed a familiar figure standing at the door. Her heart skipped. It was her mother. Namsa was dressed neatly, as always, her handbag tucked under her arm, her lips pressed into a forced smile. Mama, Zanil said carefully, setting down her clipboard. What are you doing here? Namsa glanced around the clinic, pretending to admire the space. I was nearby, she said lightly. I thought I'd check on you. But her eyes told a different story. They were scanning every corner, taking in the polished floors, the new equipment, the long line of patients waiting to be seen. The clinic was full of life that morning. Children giggling in the waiting area, an old man chatting happily with a nurse, the smell of fresh disinfectant in the air. It didn't look like a small community clinic anymore. It looked professional, thriving, respected. Namsa's smile faded as she turned back to her daughter. You've done well, she said slowly, the words sounding heavy on her tongue. I didn't realize it had become this big. Zanil nodded, keeping her tone polite. It's been a lot of hard work, but it's worth it. There was a pause. Then Namsa's eyes narrowed. Tell me something, Zanil. This place, it was built with our family's money, wasn't it? The savings I gave you? The money I asked for. Her voice rose slightly, sharp and accusing. Zanil straightened her shoulders. No, Mama, she said evenly. This was built with the home Gogo trusted me with, the one she left for. Namsa blinked, caught off guard. Gogo's home? Zanil nodded. She left it to me in her will. I found the deed. I used it to build this clinic. For a moment, Namsa looked stunned. Then her expression hardened. She never told me that. Zanil's voice softened, but she didn't look away. Maybe she didn't because she knew how things might turn out. Gogo always said some things are meant for the heart, not for control. Namsa's face fell. She looked around again, but this time not with admiration, more like realization. Everything she was seeing, all the success, all the love filling the place, it had nothing to do with her. She couldn't take credit, couldn't demand a share, couldn't rewrite the story. The power she used to hold over her daughter was gone. For the first time, Zanil saw her mother not as the woman who had hurt her, but as someone lost in her own bitterness. You taught me to be strong, Zanil said quietly. I just learned to be strong without the anger. Namsa didn't reply. She turned toward the door, her voice small. You've really changed. Zanil smiled gently. I had to. As her mother walked out, the clinic door closed softly behind her. Zanil stood still for a moment, her heart calm. The girl who once begged to be let in had finally opened her own door, and this time, she held the key. As Namsa turned to leave the clinic, her steps slowed. Her shoulders, once proud and straight, now looked tired and small. She stopped at the door, her back still facing Zanil. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked. I've lost everything, Zanil. Your brother moved out. The debts are piling up. I don't even know how I'll keep the house. The words hung in the air, heavy and sad. Zanil froze, her chest tightening. This was the same woman who had thrown her out without warning, the same one who had locked her away from her own life. But seeing her now, broken, desperate, made Zanil feel something unexpected. Not anger, but empathy. She walked closer, keeping her tone gentle. Mama. Namsa turned around, tears filling her eyes. I thought I was doing what was best for you, she said softly. I wanted you to respect me, but I ended up pushing you away instead. Her voice trembled. Now I have nothing left. Zanil stood quietly for a moment, taking it all in. She could still remember that night she slept on Lorado's couch, how small and lost she felt. Her mother had taught her what it meant to lose everything, but also what it meant to rise from nothing. You taught me that lesson, Mama, Zanil said, her voice calm and steady. You taught me what losing everything feels like, but I also learned how to build again. Namsa wiped her eyes, avoiding her daughter's gaze. I don't expect you to forgive me, she whispered. Zanil took a deep breath, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small white envelope. She held it out to her mother. This isn't about forgiveness, she said softly. It's an invitation. Namsa frowned in confusion and slowly opened it. Inside was a simple card with gold lettering. Thembai Wellness Clinic, 1-year anniversary celebration. Zanil smiled gently. It's next week. I'd like you to come. No hard feelings, no speeches. Just come and see what Gogo helped me build. Her mother's lips trembled. You'd really want me there? After everything I did? Zanil nodded. Yes, because Gogo wouldn't want us to stay angry forever. And because peace is something I've worked hard for. I want to share it, not protect it. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the ocean wind outside, whistling through the open window. Then slowly, Namsa reached out and took the envelope. Thank you, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Zanil gave a small smile. You're welcome, Mama. As her mother left, Zanil felt a strange calm settle over her. She wasn't that hurt, angry girl anymore. She didn't need revenge or validation. What she needed, and finally had, was peace. Some losses break you, but the right kind of rebuilding teaches you that peace doesn't come from getting even. It comes from letting go. A year later, the clinic was filled with music, laughter, and the warm buzz of celebration. Balloons floated near the ceiling, and the scent of freshly baked cupcakes drifted through the air. It was the one-year anniversary of Thembai Wellness Clinic, and people from all over KwaZulu-Natal had come to celebrate what Zanil had built. At the back of the room, quietly sitting among the crowd, was Namsa. She looked smaller than Zanil remembered, dressed simply, her hands clasped in her lap. No one paid her much attention, but her eyes never left her daughter. When it was time for speeches, Zanil stood on the small stage, her white nurse's coat crisp, her smile glowing with pride and calm. She looked out over the faces, patients, friends, volunteers, even her mother, and felt her throat tighten. Thank you for being here, she began. This clinic started as a dream, born out of pain. There was a time when I thought losing everything was the end of my story. But I've learned something different. She paused, letting her words sink in. Sometimes being locked out isn't punishment, it's protection. Because some doors close so we can build our own. The room erupted in applause. People stood, clapping and cheering for her strength and her story. Zanil's eyes found her mother in the crowd. Namsa was clapping too, tears running down her cheeks. Their eyes met for a moment, and in that silent exchange, there was no anger left, only understanding. Zanil smiled, a calm, grateful smile. She could almost feel Gogo's spirit in the room, gentle and proud, like a warm hand on her shoulder. The locks her mother once changed had led her to the keys that truly mattered: peace, purpose, and freedom.